Friday morning at 6:12 a.m., my father was screaming so loudly through my phone that I had to hold it away from my ear. What do you mean there aren't enough beds? I stood barefoot in my kitchen in Mobile, Alabama, staring at the microwave clock while cold coffee sat untouched in my hand. Upstairs, my 7-year-old daughter Sophie was coughing again. My wife Angela hadn't slept more than maybe 40 minutes all night. And for the first time in my life, I didn't apologize. I just listened. "You locked half the damn house," my father yelled. "Linda can't even find decent towels." Angela looked up from the kitchen table. Her hair was tied back, messy dark circles under her eyes. She was still wearing the same University of Alabama sweatshirt she'd slept in. She mouthed silently. "Don't," meaning don't give in. "Don't rush down there. Don't fix it again." My father kept going. "There's no Wi-Fi. Randy brought his camper coffee machine because your sister said you stocked the kitchen every year. What the hell's gotten into you?" I finally spoke. "I told you to get a hotel." Then I hung up. The silence afterward felt strange. Not peaceful exactly. More like the moment after a storm warning when everybody's waiting to see if the roof stays on. Angela stared at me for a few seconds. "You really hung up on him?" "Yeah," I said quietly. "I guess I did." Upstairs, Sophie started coughing again. Angela immediately pushed back her chair and headed upstairs. That was our life lately. Medicine schedules, thermometers, humidifiers, half-finished cups of tea sitting all over the house. Our pediatrician thought it was pneumonia developing. Nothing life-threatening, thank God, but enough to scare you when your kid's breathing sounds rough at 2 in the morning. I stood there alone for a minute, looking at my phone lighting up again with incoming calls. Dad. Trina. Dad again. I turned it face down on the counter. That beach house had been a blessing once. Now it felt like a second job I paid to keep. I inherited the place 12 years earlier after my Uncle Earl passed away. It wasn't some giant mansion either. Just a solid 2-story beach house near Fort Morgan. Weathered wood siding, wraparound porch. Enough room for a couple families if everybody behaved themselves. At first I loved bringing people there. Back then, Mom still cooked breakfast with music playing in the kitchen. Dad would fish early in the morning with my cousins. Everybody laughed more. Or maybe I just remember it that way, because people tend to soften old memories once they're gone. Over time, things changed. The beach house slowly stopped being David's place. It became the family beach house. Funny how easy that transformation happened when everybody else wasn't paying insurance, or replacing storm-damaged roofs, or writing checks after hurricanes pushed salt water through the downstairs storage area. 2 years earlier, after Hurricane Nicole, they spent nearly $14,000 repairing siding and replacing damaged ductwork. Insurance covered less than half. The premium doubled the following year anyway. Nobody asked how I handled it. They just asked if the grill still worked by Memorial Day. I should have said something sooner. That's the truth. But somewhere along the line, I got used to being the dependable one. The fixer. The guy who stocked the refrigerator before everybody arrived. The guy who stayed an extra day cleaning sand out of shower drains after everybody else drove home. Part of me even liked being needed. That's the embarrassing part nobody talks about. Around 9 that morning, Angela came downstairs holding Sophie against her shoulder. Sophie looked miserable. Flushed cheeks, half asleep. "Daddy," she whispered. "Hey, bug. You mad? Kids notice everything." I rubbed her back gently. "No, sweetheart. Just tired." She nodded like she understood more than she probably should have. Angela carried her to the couch and sat beside her, while cartoons played softly on low volume. Then she looked at me carefully. "You want to tell me what's happening down there now?" I exhaled slowly and leaned against the kitchen counter. "Apparently there aren't enough beds." "Well," she said dryly, "that tends to happen when 26 people invite themselves somewhere." Despite everything, I laughed a little. Just a little. That week had started with a video call Tuesday night. I almost ignored it because I was finishing invoices in my office, but Dad kept calling. When I answered, half the family was already on screen. my mother smiling, Trina holding wine, cousins popping in and out. Dad looked straight into the camera and announced, "We're bringing back the Mercer Beach reunion this year." I frowned immediately. "What reunion?" "At your place," he said like it was already settled. 26 people. Thursday through Monday. I honestly thought he was joking. Angela had been sitting beside me folding laundry when she quietly said, "Sophie's pretty sick right now. Maybe this isn't the best weekend." Mom gave that soft, fake laugh she used whenever she wanted to guilt somebody without sounding mean. "Oh, honey, your father and I are getting older. We don't know how many more family summers we've got left." Then Dad added, "And everybody already took time off work. Meaning, don't ruin this for everyone." 10 minutes later, he posted the announcement in the Mercer family group chat anyway. No asking, just details. I remember staring at my phone while message bubbles exploded underneath. "Can't wait. Beach time. Who's bringing cards?" David still got that smoker grill. Angela looked at me carefully and said, "You know you can say no." I typed, "You should probably reserve hotel rooms." Trina immediately replied with laughing emojis. Then Mom wrote, "We're coming anyway." Something inside me just went quiet after that. No anger, no yelling. Just exhaustion. I left the group chat. That night, Angela found me sitting alone on the back porch. "You okay?" "Honestly," I said. "I don't even think they see me anymore." She sat beside me. Then she said the sentence that stayed stuck in my head for 3 straight days. "David, they don't see you as family. They see you as a service." I didn't argue because deep down I knew she was right. Later that night, while Angela slept beside Sophie upstairs, I stayed awake staring at the ceiling fan turning slowly in the dark. Finally, around midnight, I made my decision. Not revenge exactly, more like retirement. After 20 years of carrying everybody else, I was done rescuing grown adults from consequences. And by Thursday afternoon, I was driving toward Gulf Shores, alone in my old Ford truck, with a box of new door locks sitting on the passenger seat. The drive from Mobile to Gulf Shores usually relaxed me. Not that Thursday. Traffic crawled once I got closer to the water. Vacationers pulling boats, pickup trucks hauling jet skis, Florida tags everywhere. Summer on the Alabama coast always felt like half the South trying to squeeze itself onto one strip of sand. I drove with the radio off. Just road noise and my own thoughts. Around Orange Beach, my phone buzzed through the truck speakers again. "Mom." I let it ring. Then immediately Dad. Then Trina. I ignored all of them. By the time I turned onto Fort Morgan Road, the sky had gone pale gray with that heavy coastal humidity that makes your shirt stick to your back the second you step outside. The beach house came into view slowly through the sea oats. Weathered blue siding, white porch railing, still standing after every storm life threw at it. Sometimes I loved that house. Sometimes I hated what it turned me into. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. Quiet. No TV, no family noise, no coolers dragging across hardwood floors. Just the hum of the downstairs AC. I stood there for a long minute looking around. Then I got to work. Not destroying anything. Not vandalizing anything. Just stopping the free full-service vacation package everybody expected me to provide. First thing I did was walk upstairs and unlock the owner closet in the hallway. Inside were all the things people somehow thought magically appeared every summer. Extra towels, clean, sheets, beach, blankets, pillows, spare coffee makers, paper towels, toilet paper, propane, receipts, batteries, extension cords. I started packing the good stuff into plastic bins. Not angrily either. Methodically. Like a man finally clocking out after too much overtime. Every folded towel reminded me of some old memory. Cousin Eric spilling beer across the upstairs carpet and laughing because David'll fix it. My father once inviting 2 strangers from church to stay an extra weekend without even calling me first. Trina posting beach photos online captioned, "Family beach house weekends are the best." Never David's beach house. Always family beach house. Around 3 in the afternoon, my phone buzzed again while I was removing bedding from the upstairs rooms. Voicemail. Mom. I almost deleted it without listening. Instead, I pressed play and set the phone on the dresser while I folded sheets. David. I don't understand why you're acting like this, she said softly. Your father's been excited about this reunion for months. Months. Interesting considering I'd heard about it Tuesday. Her voice continued. One day we won't be around anymore. Families are supposed to make sacrifices for each other. I stopped folding for a second. That word again. Sacrifices. Funny how sacrifice always seemed to mean the same people giving and the same people taking. Mom kept talking. We already told everyone the beach house was available. Your father's pride is hurt. Please don't embarrass him. That part finally made me laugh. Not because it was funny. Because even now with my daughter sick at home, the priority was still protecting my father's feelings. Not mine. I deleted the voicemail and kept packing. By late afternoon, the house looked strange. Not empty. Just stripped of comfort. I removed. All the decent cookware, the coffee station serving platters, smart TVs, router and modem, extra fans, board games, beach chairs. I locked 3 upstairs bedrooms with new keypad locks from Home Depot. Not because I wanted revenge. Because 26 people had no business spreading through every inch of a house they didn't own. Downstairs I left. 1 old couch, folding chairs, paper plates, a rice cooker, a couple standing fans, basic pots. Enough for survival. Not enough for a free luxury reunion. I also paused the propane refill service through the app on my phone and changed the Wi-Fi password to something random I wouldn't even remember later. Then I emptied the refrigerator completely, except for mustard packets and half a bottle of ketchup. Petty. Maybe a little. But honestly, after 12 years of stocking groceries for relatives who never once asked how much anything cost, it felt deserved. Around 6 o'clock, I sat alone at the kitchen counter, eating drive-through fried chicken from a Foosackly's bag. The house sounded different without televisions running. You could hear the wind outside, the creaking wood, the ice maker dropping cubes into an empty freezer tray. That's when the guilt started creeping in. Not guilt about the house, guilt about my father. I kept remembering him younger, teaching me how to cast fishing line off Dauphin Island piers, helping me rebuild my first truck engine, showing up at my high school baseball games after working 12-hour shifts. People aren't one thing their whole lives. That's what makes family hard. You remember who they were while dealing with who they became. By 7:30, I almost called him. Seriously. I almost gave in. I even picked up my phone. Then Angela texted me a photo from home. Sophie asleep on the couch with a thermometer sticking out from under a blanket. Caption: fever still 101.8. Right underneath it. Don't cave. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I put the phone back down. An hour later, I printed a copy of the Realtor walkthrough notice from my email. Saturday, 10 a.m., Holloway Property Group. I placed it neatly on the kitchen counter, beside a handwritten note. Investor walkthrough Saturday morning. Please lock up before leaving. David. That was it. No speech, no dramatic threats. Just reality. Before leaving, I walked through the house one final time. The sunset light coming through the windows made everything glow orange and gold. For a second, I felt sad enough to choke on it. Not because of the house. Because I realized this reunion probably marked the end of something bigger. The old version of our family. Maybe it had been over for years already. I just hadn't admitted it yet. Friday morning, I was back home in Mobile when the screaming started. Dad called at 6:12 sharp. The second I answered, he exploded. There's no damn Wi-Fi. Why are rooms locked? Your mother can't find coffee filters. I calmly hit the speaker button so Angela could hear. Dad kept going. Randy slept on a folding chair. Trina says there's one working television in the entire house. There are 0 working televisions, I corrected. Silence. Then you took the TVs. I own the TVs. Angela covered her mouth, trying not to laugh. Dad lowered his voice into that dangerous tone he used when I was a kid. You better get down here and fix this. I looked upstairs toward Sophie's bedroom, then back at my phone. And for the first time in my adult life, I said something my father clearly never expected to hear from me. No. By noon, Friday, the Mercer family reunion had officially turned into survival camp. I learned that from the 37 missed calls on my phone and the flood of texts Angela kept reading aloud from the family group chat I'd left. Apparently, Trina had added Angela back into it sometime that morning. Bad decision. Angela sat beside Sophie on the couch while scrolling through messages with the kind of fascinated horror people use watching tornado footage. Oh my God, she muttered. What now? She tilted the phone toward me. A picture of Uncle Randy asleep upright in a folding chair with a beach towel draped over him like a blanket. Underneath it, Trina had written, "This is elder abuse." A second photo showed 3 teenagers sharing one box fan in the upstairs hallway because the AC struggled to cool that many people. Another message popped up from cousin Melissa. Somebody used the last paper plates. Then, who took the coffee maker? I should have felt guilty. Honestly, part of me did. But another part, the exhausted part that had spent years paying for everybody else's comfort, couldn't stop noticing something. Nobody was asking if Sophie felt better. Not one person. The entire family reunion had become beds, towels, coffee, Wi-Fi, air conditioning. That was it. Angela must have been thinking the same thing because she quietly said, "They really don't get it." I rubbed my eyes. No. Sophie stirred under her blanket. "You fighting with Grandpa?" "No, sweetheart." Sounds like fighting. Kids hear more than adults realize. I sat beside her carefully. Sometimes grown-ups forget other people get tired, too. She thought about that seriously, like children do. Then she asked Grandpa still coming see me. That question landed harder than Dad's screaming had. Because the truth was, nobody had even mentioned visiting Sophie since arriving. Not once. I kissed her forehead gently. We'll see, Bug. Around 2 that afternoon, Dad finally stopped calling, which somehow worried me more. Frank Mercer didn't stop pushing unless he was planning something. Sure enough, 20 minutes later, my cousin Eric called instead. I almost ignored it. Then I answered. "What?" "Man," Eric sighed heavily. "This is bad." "How bad?" "You ever seen 26 people fight over 2 bathrooms?" Despite myself, I laughed a little. Eric lowered his voice. "Look between you and me. Your dad promised everybody this was handled." I figured. No, I mean, really handled. He told people the house was stocked. Said you'd probably cater one night again. Of course he did. 3 years earlier, I'd paid for barbecue catering after Dad casually volunteered me during another reunion. Eric kept talking, and Trina invited extra people. I closed my eyes. How many extra? 5. I sat there staring at the wall. 5. Yeah. Eric, there were already 26 people. I know. That explained the missing beds. Then he said something unexpected. You know, people are starting to turn on your dad. That got my attention. What do you mean? He oversold this whole thing. Folks drove from Missouri and Texas, thinking this was going to be some luxury beach setup. It's still a beach house. David Eric said carefully. It looks like FEMA housing down there. Even Angela laughed at that one. Eric lowered his voice again. Between us, I don't think people realized how much work you were doing all these years. That hit differently. Not satisfying exactly. Just strange. Because I honestly didn't know who I was without being useful. After the call ended, I stepped outside onto the back patio. The Alabama heat pressed down like wet laundry. Neighbors were mowing grass. A dog barked somewhere down the block. Normal Friday afternoon stuff. Meanwhile, 40 miles south, my entire extended family was slowly collapsing over missing coffee filters. Part of me wanted to drive down there and fix everything. That instinct doesn't disappear overnight. You spend decades solving problems for people. Eventually, your brain starts panicking when chaos happens without you. Angela came outside holding sweet tea. You're thinking about going down there. I didn't answer. You can't keep rescuing people from lessons they need to learn. I know. You sure? I looked out across the yard. My dad's 74. And I keep thinking, what if this is the moment he remembers forever? Angela leaned against the porch rail. David, you remember every moment people used you. Why shouldn't he remember one moment somebody finally told him no? That shut me up. Around 5 o'clock, Trina accidentally sent Angela a voice memo clearly meant for somebody else. We sat there listening together. Trina sounded furious. There's literally no internet. Randy's trying to watch the Braves game on his phone, and there's like one bar out here. Mom's crying because somebody took her room. Dad keeps blaming David, but honestly, he warned everybody. Angela replayed that last sentence. Honestly, he warned everybody. Exactly. Nobody listened because nobody believed I'd actually stop accommodating them. At 6:15, my phone buzzed again. Unknown Gulf Shores number. I answered cautiously. Hello. A calm older woman responded. Mr. Mercer. This is Denise Holloway. My husband and I are scheduled for tomorrow morning's property walkthrough. Right. The investors. I'd almost forgotten with all the chaos. Yes, ma'am. There was a slight pause. We just wanted to confirm tomorrow still works. I stared at the sky for a second. Part of me considered canceling. Seriously. Tomorrow was going to humiliate my father publicly, maybe permanently. Then I remembered Sophie coughing upstairs, while 26 people ignored her existence because the beach house wasn't comfortable enough. Yes, I said finally, tomorrow still works. Denise sounded relieved. Wonderful. We're driving in from Ohio tonight. After hanging up, guilt settled in my stomach again. Not sharp guilt, heavy guilt. The kind middle-aged men carry quietly for years. Angela could read my face immediately. You almost canceled. Yeah, you still can. I looked back toward the house where Sophie slept upstairs. Then I imagined Dad promising away my property like it belonged to him. Imagined another 10 years of this. Another 20? No, I said quietly, I can't. That night I barely slept. Not because of Dad. Because I kept wondering whether this whole thing made me selfish. Around 2:30 a.m., I walked downstairs for water and found Angela sitting alone in the dark kitchen. You okay? I asked softly. She nodded tiredly. Then after a long silence, you know what scares me. What? That if Sophie grows up watching this, she'll think love means exhausting yourself for people who don't respect you. That sentence hit me harder than anything else so far. Because suddenly this wasn't about a beach house anymore. It was about what kind of life my daughter would think was normal. The next morning at exactly 9:57 a.m., my father called again. This time he wasn't screaming. He sounded confused. Why are strangers pulling into the driveway? I looked at the clock. Then I answered calmly. Those would be the buyers? 3 seconds of silence. Then, the what? And right then, in a beach house full of sweaty relatives sitting on folding chairs with no Wi-Fi, my father discovered the property had already been listed for sale for 3 weeks. My father didn't speak for a full 5 seconds after I told him the buyers had arrived. Then all hell broke loose. You're selling the house. His voice cracked loud enough that I had to pull the phone away again. In the background, I heard confusion explode through the house. What buyers? Wait, what David's selling? Frank, what's he talking about? I stayed calm. The investor walkthrough's been scheduled since last week. I left the paperwork on the kitchen counter. You can't do this while people are staying here. I told everybody to get hotels. That's when I heard my mother in the background. Frank, who are Gary, and Denise. Then another voice. People are outside taking pictures. I closed my eyes for a second. The whole scene played perfectly in my imagination. 26 overheated relatives' coolers stacked in hallways, folding chairs everywhere, kids sleeping on air mattresses, my father sweating through a polo shirt, while retired investors from Ohio toured the property. It should have felt satisfying. Instead, mostly I felt tired. Dad lowered his voice suddenly. That was always worse than yelling. You're embarrassing this family." "No," I said quietly. "I'm embarrassing you." Silence again. Then he hung up on me. Angela slowly set her coffee cup down. "Well," she said, "that probably went badly." I gave a dry laugh. "You think?" Upstairs, Sophie finally seemed slightly better. Fever down under 100 for the first time in 2 days. She was propped up in bed, watching old Scooby-Doo reruns while eating saltine crackers. Seeing that alone made me feel lighter. I sat beside her and rubbed her back gently. "You smell like Vicks," she informed me. "Thanks. You still fighting Grandpa?" I sighed. "Complicated." She nodded like that made perfect sense. Kids are funny that way. They accept emotional complexity better than adults sometimes. Around noon, Trina finally called. Not screaming. Crying. Which honestly surprised me. "You sold the house?" she asked immediately. "I'm selling the house. Dad told everybody this place would stay in the family." I leaned back in my chair slowly. "There it is." "What?" "The real reason everybody's freaking out." She got quiet. And that silence told me everything. For years, my father had apparently been promising people access to that house forever. Maybe not legally, maybe not directly, but emotionally, socially. Like he owned it through force of personality. Trina spoke again softer this time. "He told Aunt Carol eventually you'd probably put it into some kind of family trust." I laughed once. Not happily. "You mean my house, the one I pay for?" "Well, when you say it like that, how else should I say it?" Downstairs, Angela was listening from the kitchen. I could tell by her face she was hearing things she'd suspected for years. Trina sighed heavily. "Look, this whole thing got out of control. You invited extra people." A pause. "Maybe." "How many?" "3. Eric said 5. Another pause. "Okay, maybe 5. I rubbed my forehead. "Trina, there are 26 people in that house. 28 technically." "Oh my God." She suddenly started laughing through tears. Actual exhausted laughter. "I swear to God, Uncle Randy slept next to a cooler last night." Despite everything, I laughed too. And weirdly enough, that moment cracked something open between us. For the first time in years, my sister sounded less like an entitled guest and more like an actual human being, trapped in a ridiculous situation. Then her voice softened again. "David." "What? You really serious about selling?" "Yeah. Mom's gonna lose her mind." "I know. She keeps saying you're destroying family tradition." I stared out the window toward our backyard fence. "No," I said quietly. "I think I'm ending unpaid labor." That shut her up. Around 2 o'clock, my cousin Eric texted me a photo from the beach house. Gary and Denise Holloway stood in the driveway smiling politely, while my father gestured wildly with both hands, like a man directing traffic after a disaster. Caption underneath: "Your dad's having a stroke." 5 seconds later: "Denise seems nice though." Then another: "Randy asked if investors come with free towels." I shouldn't have laughed as hard as I did. Angela walked by holding laundry and shook her head. "You know what's funny?" "What?" "If your family had just respected one boundary, none of this would have happened." And she was right. That afternoon, I finally drove down to Gulf Shores. Not to save anybody, just because part of me felt I owed the Holloways a proper apology for the insanity they'd walked into. The second I pulled into the driveway, I could feel tension in the air. Coolers everywhere. Cars parked halfway onto the grass. Kids running around overtired and sunburned. The house itself looked exhausted. Like me. The moment Dad saw my truck, he stormed across the driveway. "You blindsided this family." I got out slowly. "No, Dad," I warned everybody. "You don't sell family property without discussing it first." That sentence stopped me cold. Family property. There it was again. Not your house. Not the house you inherited. Family property. I looked him directly in the eye. "It was never yours to promise." For a second, I thought he might actually hit me. Not because my father was violent. He wasn't. But because humiliation sat badly on proud old men. Behind him, Relatives awkwardly pretended not to listen while absolutely listening. Mom stepped onto the porch. Her mascara looked smeared from crying. "You're tearing this family apart over a beach house." Something inside me finally snapped then. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just honest. "No, Mom," I said quietly. "This family started falling apart when everybody decided I existed to finance their vacations." Nobody spoke. Even the kids nearby got quiet. Then Uncle Randy wandered out carrying a paper plate with cold baked beans on it. Anybody know where the forks went? The timing was so ridiculous I almost laughed again. Even Dad looked like he wanted to. But nobody could stop the momentum now. That evening I invited everybody to dinner at a seafood restaurant near the marina. Dad assumed it meant reconciliation. Honestly, part of me thought maybe it did too. Until I got home later and opened the spreadsheet on my laptop. 12 years of expenses. Roof repairs, insurance, flood cleanup, furniture replacement, property taxes. $47,312. And that was only what I documented. I stared at the total for a long time. Then I printed 3 copies. By Sunday afternoon, everybody looked tired. Not vacation tired. Real tired. The kind that happens when too many people stay too long in a space never designed for them in the first place. The seafood restaurant sat near the marina in Gulf Shores, one of those places with laminated menus, mounted red snapper on the walls, and locals who called everybody baby, no matter their age. Angela almost didn't come. "You sure you want to do this?" she asked while getting dressed. "No," I admitted. "But I think I need to." She studied me carefully. "Okay, but we leave the second it turns ugly." I laughed softly. "So probably appetizers." For the first time all weekend, Sophie's fever stayed below 100. She looked pale, but better curled up in a booth coloring on the kids' menu, while Angela sat beside her. When we walked into the restaurant, every Mercer family member turned toward us at once. That told me everything I needed to know. Nobody had fixed anything after I left. Dad sat at the center of the long table like a man waiting for trial. Mom wouldn't look at me. Trina looked exhausted. Uncle Randy was sunburned enough to glow under restaurant lighting. I took my seat calmly. Nobody spoke for a few seconds. Then Dad started. "You've humiliated this family over money." Straight to it. No small talk. I pulled the folder from beneath my arm and laid it on the table. "No," I said evenly. I got tired of pretending money didn't matter. Mom folded her arms immediately. "Oh, please, families help each other." I did help. Dad scoffed loudly. "It's a beach house, David, not a war zone." That's when I opened the folder. Inside were printed spreadsheets, receipts, insurance statements, contractor invoices, and repair bills dating back over a decade. I slid the top page toward him. Roof repair after Hurricane Nicole, $11,600. Nobody moved. I flipped another page. Flood mitigation downstairs, $4,200. Another. New HVAC compressor after Uncle Randy left doors open all weekend in July. Randy stopped chewing. I continued calmly. Property taxes, insurance increases, plumbing repairs, furniture replacement after somebody dragged wet fishing gear across the sectional. Nobody interrupted because suddenly this wasn't emotional anymore. It was math. Specific math. The waitress arrived holding drinks right in the middle of the silence. She glanced around the table slowly. "Everybody okay over here?" Nobody answered. She set down my bourbon carefully, then quietly said smart order. Even Angela laughed under her breath. Dad looked furious. "You kept score all these years." I shook my head. "No, I kept receipts." That landed hard. Mom finally snapped. "You make us sound like freeloaders." I looked directly at her. "You stayed at that house 14 times last year." Silence. "You invited church friends there without asking me." More silence. "You told people it was the Mercer family beach house while I worked overtime paying for it." Across the table, Trina stared down at her sweet tea. Dad leaned forward. You don't understand what that house means to this family. No, I said quietly. I understand exactly what it means. That's the problem. His jaw tightened. You're selfish. That word should have hurt. Instead, it just made me tired. I looked around the table slowly. You know what's selfish? I asked. A man sitting beside his sick daughter, while 26 people complain there aren't enough towels. Nobody spoke. Even the restaurant noise around us suddenly seemed quieter. Then Dad made his mistake. He pointed toward me and said, I was trying to preserve something for this family. What exactly? The house. There it was. Finally. He exhaled heavily. I told people eventually we'd put it into a family trust. Angela blinked slowly beside me. Trina looked horrified. Mom immediately whispered Frank. But it was too late now. I stared at my father. You promised away my property. It wasn't like that. How was it? You're my son. I laughed once. Short, sharp. And somehow that turned into everybody acting like I'm the staff. A couple tables nearby had absolutely stopped pretending not to listen. Dad looked around and lowered his voice. I wanted the family to keep gathering there. And for the first time all night, he sounded old. Not powerful. Not intimidating. Just tired. That complicated things. Because suddenly I could see the real truth underneath all the entitlement. My father wasn't only controlling. He was scared. Scared of aging. Scared of family drifting apart. Scared nobody would gather once he stopped being the center holding everybody together. And somewhere along the line he decided my house was the glue. Unfortunately, I was the one paying for the glue. The waitress returned with appetizers. She looked at the tension, then looked directly at me. Honey, she said quietly, while setting down fried pickles, you earned this bourbon. Then she walked away before anybody could respond. Even Mom almost smiled. Almost. Dinner after that became strangely calmer. Not warm, not healed. Just honest. People started admitting things. Cousin Melissa confessed she always assumed Dad helped financially with the property. Trina admitted nobody realized how expensive coastal insurance had become. Uncle Randy quietly muttered, probably should have chipped in more. That one nearly caused a heart attack around the table, because nobody had ever heard Randy voluntarily offer responsibility before. But not everybody softened. Mom stayed angry. You're still breaking tradition. Angela finally spoke up then. Calm but firm. No, Linda. He's ending a system that only worked because David sacrificed himself. Mom looked stunned. Angela almost never challenged her directly. Then Sophie, half asleep beside her mother, quietly asked, Can we go home now? That ended dinner better than anything else could have. Outside the restaurant, the Alabama air felt heavy and damp. Storm clouds rolled over the Gulf in the distance. Everybody lingered awkwardly near the parking lot. Nobody knew how to leave. Finally, Dad looked at me and asked quietly, You really selling it? Yes. He nodded slowly. Not angry this time. Just defeated. Then he walked toward his car without another word. That night, the storm finally rolled in. And without realizing it, my family was about to discover exactly how much invisible work I'd been doing for years. The storm hit Gulf Shores around 1:30 in the morning. Not a hurricane, nothing dramatic enough for national news. Just one of those ugly coastal storms that rolls in fast off the Gulf. Heavy rain. Wind hard enough to rattle windows. Lightning flashing across water every few seconds. Normally, I would have already been at the beach house before the first weather alert even hit phones. I knew every weak spot in that property. Where water pooled near the patio doors, which breaker occasionally tripped during heavy rain. How to angle sandbags near the downstairs storage room, where the backup generator switch stuck halfway, unless you kicked it lightly. For 12 years, nobody noticed those things, because I handled them before anybody had to. This time, I stayed home. At 2:07 a.m., my phone started vibrating again. I stared at the screen from bed. Dad. Then Trina. Then Mom. Angela rolled over beside me. You gonna answer? I sat there for a long moment. Every instinct in my body screamed, Go help them. That instinct had built my entire adult life. But another thought finally pushed through it. They're not in danger. They're uncomfortable. There's a difference. So I silenced the phone. I barely slept anyway. By sunrise, social media videos had already started appearing from Gulf shores. Palm trees whipping sideways, flooded parking lots, tourists filming waves crashing over parts of the seawall. Angela made coffee while Sophie watched cartoons wrapped in a blanket. For the first morning in days, her cough sounded looser. Better. Then Dad called again. This time I answered. His voice sounded different immediately. Less angry, more overwhelmed. The downstairs patio's leaking. You put the storm panels down. Silence. No. Did anybody move the outdoor cushions inside? No. Did you sandbag the storage side? Another silence. Finally, we didn't know. Exactly. That was the whole point. Not revenge. Visibility. For years, everybody enjoyed the beach house while remaining completely blind to the work underneath it. Dad exhaled heavily into the phone. The generator's acting up too. It always sticks halfway. You gotta kick the side panel once. A pause. Then how do you know all this? I almost laughed. Instead, I just said, because I'm the one who always handled it. He didn't answer. After hanging up, I stood quietly in the kitchen staring out at our backyard. Angela touched my arm gently. You okay? I don't know. And honestly, I didn't. Because the strangest part of all this wasn't the fighting. It was realizing how invisible I'd become inside my own family. Later that afternoon, Trina called. Not dramatic this time. Just tired. You know, Mom tried to use the generator like a lawnmower. I laughed despite myself. Please tell me you're kidding. I wish. Then she got quiet. David. Yeah. I owe you an apology. That caught me off guard enough I didn't respond immediately. For what? For all of it, honestly. Rain crackled softly through her phone speaker. I really thought this house just worked. I leaned against the counter slowly. That's kind of the problem. I know now. There was genuine embarrassment in her voice. Not performative guilt, real guilt. Then she added quietly, Dad told everybody for years that someday we'd all share this place. I closed my eyes. Yeah, I figured that out. I don't think he meant to manipulate you. No, I admit it. I think he just never imagined I'd say no. That silence between us felt different this time. Less hostile, more honest. Then she laughed softly. By the way, Uncle Randy flooded the upstairs bathroom. How? We still don't fully know. That one actually made me laugh out loud. By evening, the storm had mostly passed. Minor flooding, some soaked rugs, nothing catastrophic. But emotionally, something had shifted. Several relatives had started cleaning without being asked. People chipped in for takeout food. Cousin Melissa bought extra towels from Walmart. The family was finally functioning like adults instead of vacation guests. Mom unfortunately stayed angry. Angela found that out firsthand when Mom called around dinner. I was upstairs helping Sophie with medicine when I heard voices downstairs getting sharper. Then suddenly Angela snapped. No, Linda, stop blaming me. I froze halfway down the stairs. Angela almost never raised her voice. You think I turned David against this family, she continued. No. I spent 15 years watching him exhaust himself, trying to keep everybody happy while nobody noticed what it cost him. Silence from Mom's side. Then Angela delivered the sentence that finally ended the conversation. He's your son, Linda, not your cruise director. Click. She hung up. When Angela turned around and saw me standing there, she looked embarrassed. Sorry. No, I said quietly. Don't apologize. Because honestly, nobody had defended me like that in a very long time. Sunday night, I drove down to the beach house alone. Not because anybody asked me to. Because after the storm, part of me needed to see the place one more time before the sale finalized. The driveway was nearly empty when I arrived. Most relatives had already left early. Inside the house smelled like damp towels and exhaustion. Dad sat alone on the back porch facing the Gulf. No television, no crowd, No performance. Just an old man staring at dark water. I sat down beside him quietly. For a while, neither of us spoke. Finally, he said, "You remember when you were 12 and we slept on this beach during that fishing trip?" I nodded slowly. "We got eaten alive by mosquitoes." That made him smile faintly. Then the smile disappeared. "I thought if everybody kept coming here," he said softly, "things would stay the same." There it was. The real truth underneath all of it. Not greed. Fear. Fear of getting old. Fear of losing control. Fear that family traditions disappear once the parents stop holding them together. I understood that fear more than I wanted to. But understanding somebody doesn't erase what they've done. Dad rubbed his hands together slowly. "I didn't realize how much you were carrying." I looked out toward the Gulf. "You never asked." He nodded once. No apology. Not directly. Frank Mercer probably didn't know how. But it was the closest thing to honesty we'd had in years. When I finally stood to leave, Dad quietly said, "You really done with the house?" "Yeah." He stared out at the water another few seconds. Then he nodded. This time he didn't argue. 32 days later, the sale officially closed.